First story, I kicked my pregnant girlfriend out of my house after she stole from me to give to her family. Now she claims I'm abusive and controlling. Long story short. My girlfriend and I have been living together for around 10 months. When she first moved in, she insisted on paying rent, and I was reluctant to charge her if it didn't work out, but she forced it and paid a month. Then I found out she's struggling for money, unable to pay for things, is in a lot of debt, and lives month to month. She agreed with me that she would start when she clears the debt. Fast forward to Christmas. I find out she's been stealing my clothes to give to her family as gifts. Another post on here, she lied for 2 weeks, blaming me until I showed her footage of her taking the things from the camera in the living room to watch the dog when I am out. I later then discover through letters and texts I've seen appear on her phone, she's been doing nothing to pay any of it off. So I confront her, she tells me and shows me messages that her mother and sisters constantly guilt trip her into giving them money and have for years. They will message her on payday asking for it, and she feels bad saying no. Despite none of them ever paying it back, her M loan owes her over £6,000. She has taken a ton of loans out for her family, and they leave her with the debt and don't pay it back. Luckily, her credit is now at the point where nobody will loan to her, but she still tries and does it for them. I also find out I went through her finances. Yes, I shouldn't have, but something wasn't adding up. And I was being lied to that in the space of 20 minutes, she spent $300,000 on gambling sites. All during this time, she isn't paying a penny towards rent bills or anything. She occasionally buys food shopping or trips out to Starbucks. I tell her, enough is enough and she needs to start paying her way. If she can give handouts to her family and gamble, she can pay for where she lives. And she's taken me for a ride when she should have been saving and clearing debts. I make roughly 5 times what she does, but I've been fair in that. The bills are split proportionally to income earned per month and pay £600, which includes rent. And her share of the bills I take on the rest, which is substantially more, but I believe it's not fair to take more on the first of this month. She tells me she can't pay rent. She says she's paid out too much on our trips to Starbucks and food shopping, and I will get it when I get it. But she doesn't understand why I need it this month when she's lived for free the past 9 months anyway. I've asked her to explain where her money has exactly gone, but she tells me I am controlling and it's none of my business. In fairness, she will pay when we go food shopping, but rarely in comparison to me. I've kicked her out as of yesterday and told her she needs to find somewhere to live. She is, however, pregnant, and she's using that card as a way to guilt trip me and make it out, like I've thrown her and my child onto the streets. In my opinion, she is taking me for a ride and prioritizing her family. That is, using her over her own family should start it. What's the solution here to getting her to see she's not treating me fairly? TLDR girlfriend hasn't paid rent for 9 months while she was supposed to be clearing debts. Instead, she was giving money to her family, gambling, and I've thrown her out because she's refusing to pay. Again, she is pregnant. Update. I sat her down and gave her an ultimatum early. Last week, I explained to her that we are a family and became a family when she decided to have a baby with me. I told her, if we're going to stay together, she's going to have to be a lot more open, contribute, and take on no more debt. She can't afford, which brings it to my door when she can't pay. I also told her I want to see her bank statements because I suspect she has a gambling problem and is in some serious debt. She agreed to all of this and committed to showing me the bank statements when I ask, and says going forward she will pay towards bills. I believe she's turned a corner and started getting along with her better, and she moves back in. As I was sitting next to her phone last night when she went to grab a drink, her phone lit up with a text message. It read, "Loan accepted by ex-lender, click here to accept." I immediately called her out and she started crying, telling me she has no money left again for the month, and she's had to resort to payday loans for some money. I tell her she should have come to me and tell her I explicitly said no more loans. She also tells me she won't be able to afford to pay towards bills again. She works full-time and brings home around $1,400 to $12,200 a month, depending on hours, but a lot of the time she phones in sick, so she gets sick pay, which is a lot less. I asked to see her bank statements, and she refuses, telling me I am being controlling by asking when she's told me and I don't need to see them. That's the last straw for me. I'm almost certain she's been giving it away at this point. Again, or gambling. I give her a scenario: your baby is starving and needs food, and there's none in the house. What are you going to do? She replies, you will have to pay. That's fine. I will happily support my son. I tell her because the mother is clearly a deadbeat. So I ask to see her Facebook Messenger to see if her family has been hitting her up for free money again. And Conviel, all of the family members that borrow from her, have the chats cleared. She says she deletes them to be tidy, yet mine is still there. I told her this isn't going to work, and she tells me I am a controlling freak, basically, and she agrees. And I've not heard from her since the moral of the story is she's too damaged from her upbringing, I am guessing. And some people you just can't change. She still messages me, asking how I am, but I am just ignoring her except for anything baby-related. I need to move on. I know a lot of people questioned whether she's pregnant, how stupid I was to get her pregnant. I agree, and if it's mine, I've been to every scan, so I know she's pregnant. As for if it's mine, I've never suspected cheating, but she's a serial liar, so I will be forcing a DNA test through the courts. I posted on a couple of different subs to make sure I wasn't getting biased opinions. The above story is 100% true. I wish it wasn't, believe me, but my focus is now getting as far away as possible from her. For my own sake, final update, after a couple of weeks of learning she was sleeping around on family members or friends' sofas, I allowed her back into the house, given that she is pregnant around a month ago. Out of concern for the baby, really given, is now 8 months pregnant. Stupid on my part. And I am now going to explain why I regret it. I've recently moved house a couple of months ago, and she was involved in the packaging and unpacking whilst I was out, mainly unpacking. I had a pretty large stack of cash in the drawer of a cabinet in the living room, around 400 to 0. This was a Christmas gift from my parents. During this time, I also sold a lot of old furniture, including a sofa, which she begged and begged for me to sell to her mother. I begrudgingly accepted this. She told me her mother had asked to borrow the money from her repeatedly to buy it from me and asked if she could pay a couple of weeks after she took it. No biggie, that's fine. I tell her mother collects the sofa, giving me 100 cash initially and tells me the rest will be with me in a week. A week comes round and she tells me it will be next month, but she's not happy as it's collapsed and I need to come take a look. I tell her it was fine, she collected it, and I am not taking a look. Basically, if you don't want it, I will collect it and sell it to someone who wants to pay. She tells me I'm not welcome in their house. My girlfriend X told her there was nothing wrong with the sofa at all when it was collected, and her mother tells her she's also not welcome my ex. Then flips it onto me, telling me I am controlling, and she didn't need to get involved to fall out with her family. I didn't make her, but I told her it showed where her priorities lie when she's defending them and not wanting to get involved over them. Screwing me over. It was left at that, back to the money. I went to see where the money went and searched the entire house. It's not there, but everything that was unpacked was there. Even pointless SAT, like a blown light bulb, was packed and unpacked. I asked her where the money is, and she immediately gets defensive, tells me it's somewhere. And immediately, I think this is all the same answer as his last time. It then dawned on me that the money I was gifted was in 10 notes, and the money I was part paid for my sofa was also in 1 note. So my also in 1. Suspicion is she stole my money for her to hand to her mother to pay me. I've basically paid myself, minus what's been taken. I confronted her and she replied, even if I did admit it to try and sort things, I don't care about you anymore anyway. So I don't need to probably make sense why she was trying to take a loan out roughly the same time she would have taken the money. So there we have it. I let her stop for a while, and this is where it's landed me. She's stealing again, whilst I have no solid proof whatsoever. It could only be her that took it, and if everything else got unpacked, then she certainly took it. She's now threatening to out me to people for who I really am. A victim of theft, I guess, and shall tell everyone how awful I am, and not to bother contacting her. I've thrown her back out again for the very last time, and I am just relieved. Not sad at all. Whilst I have no proof her reaction is all the proof I need. Now I am forcing a DNA test at birth, and will fight to make sure no child of mine is brought up in a family like hers. She has poisoned people like her. Don't change, they just take more. TLDR girlfriend has a history of taking loans out, using me, gambling, and stealing. Am I wrong for throwing her out? Update, after 9 months. A couple of months approximately after that post, she gave birth faced with either my potentially newborn son, being in a house with her family who act abusive, SL violent to each other, and smoke in the house. I made the decision to move her back in for a few months maximum, while she finds a property that's at least suitable. It's not something I wanted to do, but this is a time when he needs his mother around him, and I wanted my child in a safe and healthy environment. Many here will argue this was an utterly stupid decision, which I can accept on the surface, and this moronic idiot put me through hell for a long time already, but I did what I needed to for the baby I went in with. Extreme caution, personal devices locked down, money locked away, or hidden in places I'd never think to look, and generally just slept on the couch and kept out of the way. It wasn't a good time, and she seemed under the impression we were starting to form a relationship of some sort, which I very much corrected. I stated, this was for him, and ultimately you need to put some effort into finding him somewhere. She agreed, and told me she would also use the time to prove. Now her son is here. She's changed as a person. I didn't care either way. The damage was done. First up in the 4 months we cohabited, she paid for nothing. I and my family bought the pushchair cot clothing, and essentially anything the baby needed down to the formula. I stated this to her, and she told me, as the father, it was my job to provide. If I didn't, the child would go without. Logged and noted were the messages, which I ensured we carried the conversation on over. I made sure to get a DNA test, and a big part of me, as much as I loved the child, wanted it to be negative. I got a 99.99999% probability as the father next up. She made zero effort over the 4-month period to actually find a property. Meanwhile, trying to convince my family I was being unreasonable and wanting her out, as she just wanted a stable family after her upbringing, and I was taking it away from her. My family actually bought it for a period and told me I should just take the life sentence for the sake of the child, as staying with her and her family meant the baby had no chance in life. I offered to accompany her to meetings with authorities to secure her welfare and housing. She declined and told me she had it covered. She continually pleaded poverty to my parents, and they often bailed her out and questioned why I wasn't helping more. I simply replied, "More fool you." Their belief I was being unreasonable caused great friction, and I decided to essentially ignore their input from then on. Friends and family gifted cash that was intended for the baby, along with gifts and cards. I placed the cash intentionally in a cupboard with a battery camera hidden at the back over a period of 3-4 weeks. She took what ultimately amounted to around 2,200 footage. Again, logged and noted. I was catching her and building a case, and she didn't even know it, month 3, and she's not contributing. Still never has money despite being on mostly full pay during maternity leave. And also point blank says she's struggling to find somewhere yet again. She takes the child out and refuses to tell me where, telling me my opinion on raising him is invalid and that I was a failure of a father. I tell her she has 3 weeks to find somewhere, and she will be thrown out. She tells my family I am being financially controlling and manipulative, but they see straight through the lies. She doesn't take it seriously again. I am also logging every time she says she can't afford to buy something, even basic like wipes. And I have to. She tells me, "Family, I am a terrible father, and she's doing it." All they believe, none of it, and essentially cut her off themselves now into 4, and I tell her it's time to leave. I tell her she is out, and I do not care where I tell her my son is staying, but I have absolutely zero responsibility to her. She stalls for 4 hours crying and asks if I allow her to open up and show me her bank statements. Can she stay and sort herself out? Now, this was underhand, but people like her deserve what they give. So I agree. I start voice recording the conversation. She opens up her banking app, and I see 12 months worth of statements, and 99% of her outgoings are comprised of hundreds of transactions to gambling sites, casinos, and loan sharks, literally. Her entire monthly salary blown in days. I check her credit score, and it's in the hundreds. I took photos and gathered evidence of this. I told her if she was honest and open, we could work through. Obviously, we wouldn't. But this was being recorded, and she admitted to stealing all of the cash. I would suspect it in the past. In Christmas gifts, the statements also confirmed she's been claiming welfare for the child, on the basis she was living as a sole parent. It was then I told her I had what I needed and to pack up her things and leave. Within 30 minutes, she told me I couldn't put my child and her on the street, so I simply replied that a decent mother at this point would leave him. She clearly wasn't going to, as that's her primary weapon to try and get what she wants. She moved back in with her mother, so Unfortunately, my son ultimately ended up there anyway. Fast forward to today, and she still sends me messages almost daily about how I messed her up, didn't deserve her, and how she hates me. I don't reply. I simply file the messages under the case I've been building. I am in contact with a family lawyer, and while sole custody isn't likely at this point, building evidence over time, alongside any evidence of neglect smelling of cigarette smoke, inability to provide food, etc., is all being longed, and I will be taking action to ensure my son turns out nothing like her or her freeloading family. We co-parent, which is difficult about, and often tells me I will never see him again. And it's now my sole job to ensure he turns out the best, as ultimately he stands no chance. With her, she still constantly requests I give her things, so she doesn't need to waste her money when I have it already. I tell her in polite words to go F herself, so that's where we are. Not a great situation, but at least the child has one stable home. Second-story girlfriend broke up with me after finding a new guy, believing her friends that she deserved better. Now, after finding out the reason I worked too much was to buy a house for us and to propose, and that new guy dumped her, she came back begging to reconcile. Then my friends try to force reconciliation, and now she is stalking and harassing me. 34 minutes, I'm struggling with whether I'm in the wrong for refusing to talk to my ex. Sarah, 29, F. Not her real name. There's a lot of history here, and I will do my best to explain everything clearly. In mid-2022, I met Sarah at work, and we hit it off immediately. I fell for her quickly, and it didn't take long before we started dating. However, early in our relationship, Sarah broke up with me over something minor to make matters worse. She made a scene in front of everyone at work. I was devastated but didn't want to leave my job at first. Eventually, I realized I still had feelings for her, and seeing her every day became too painful. That's when I decided to quit and find a new job. We lived close to each other, so we bumped into each other frequently over the next few months. We started talking again, but even though I still had feelings for her, I couldn't bring myself to consider getting back together. What she had done hurt me deeply. After a couple of months, she told me she regretted breaking up with me over something. Something so minor, she admitted that doing it in front of everyone was wrong and that she had been thinking about it ever since. She seemed genuinely remorseful, and I could see she meant it, feeling that her apology was sincere. I asked if she wanted to give our relationship another try. She agreed, and by early 2023, we were officially back together 1 year later. Things were going great. We talked about marriage and building a future together, which made me feel ready to take the next step. I decided to surprise her with a proposal and started working extra hours to save for a house so we could marry not long after. I didn't tell her why I was working so much because I wanted it to be a complete surprise. Then out of nowhere, she asked for a break. I was blindsided, and when I asked why she refused to explain around the same time, I noticed she had been talking nonstop about a new guy at her workplace. But suddenly she stopped mentioning him altogether, which made me suspicious, confused, and hurt. I reached out to one of my close friends, Emily, not her real name, who along with her boyfriend still worked at the same place as Sarah. I vented to Emily about what was going on and asked if she knew anything. She said she didn't because she worked in a different department, but she promised to ask around. A few days later, Emily got back to me. She told me that Sarah had been feeling like I was distant lately, especially with me working extra hours and not going out much. Emily said some of Sarah's colleagues had been encouraging her to take a break, claiming I wasn't treating her well and wasn't as invested in the relationship on top of that. They were trying to match her up with a new guy at work, saying they would make a better pair. I told Emily about my plans to propose and buy a house for Sarah and me. That was the reason I would been working so much. I wanted to surprise her with something big. After about 2 weeks, Sarah called me and asked to meet up. I agreed, but told her up front that I needed an explanation for why she wanted a break before we could discuss anything else she brought up. How distant I'd seemed, saying it made her feel like I wasn't as invested in the relationship anymore. I told her that if she had just talked to me about it, she would have known there was a reason for my behavior. But now it didn't matter anymore. Then she mentioned the new guy at her workplace. I said his name before she could, and she looked surprised, asking how I knew I told her I wasn't an idiot. I would noticed how she suddenly stopped talking about him after bringing him up all the time. She swore that she had never cheated on me. I replied that looking for someone better at the first sign of trouble could be considered cheating by some. At that point, I told her I didn't want to hear whatever else she had to say. Whether or not she wanted to get back together didn't matter. I was breaking up with her regardless. The breakup deeply hurt me. I couldn't bear staying in the same place, so I asked my company for a transfer and used the money I would saved for the proposal to start over in a new city. While talking to Emily, the friend I had vented to before she apologized to me, she admitted that she had slipped up and told Sarah about my plans to pose and buy a house. Emily said Sarah broke down crying after hearing that I appreciated Emily's honesty, but it didn't change what had happened by mid-December. Last year, I returned to my hometown to spend Christmas and New Year's with my family. Some friends wanted to organize a party to get everyone together since many of us, myself included, had moved away and were only visiting for the holidays. Sarah was invited too. We barely interacted that night. Just a quick hi in passing. At one point, I glanced at her and saw her smiling while chatting with a group of women. That smile brought back so many memories. I realized that seeing her smile still made me feel the same way I did the first time I saw it. I thought to myself, how screwed up am I that I still feel this way? Despite those lingering feelings, I was still sad and deeply hurt by how things had ended looking back. I also started to blame myself. I should have paid more attention to how she was feeling. I could have told her about the extra work and why I was doing it. Maybe things would have turned out differently later that evening. One of my friends mentioned that Sarah's relationship with the guy from her work had only lasted a couple of months after the holidays. I planned to return to the city where I now lived. My vacation ended on January 6th, so I decided to leave on Friday. That way, I would have Saturday to sort everything out at home and prepare for the week ahead, with Sunday to relax before going back to work, before I left. One of my friends from back home called me. He said he had a favor to ask on behalf of someone else and warned me that I wouldn't like it. I could already feel my stomach sinking. Then he told me it was Sarah. She was moving to the same city where I lived to work at her relative company, and she needed a ride. He asked if I could take her. I didn't even think about it before I said no. The idea of being stuck in a car with her for hours was too much to bear. It would have been painfully awkward, just like the party, and I wasn't ready to put myself through that. He told me that Sarah and I needed to talk, but I wasn't having any of it. I went back home, and last week, I went for a run and stopped to rest a little in a park when I heard a familiar voice say, "Hi, it was Sarah." She tried to start a conversation by asking how I was and mentioning that we didn't get a chance to talk at the party, but I cut her off saying I didn't want to talk to her. She told me not to be like that we needed to have a conversation, but I said no. She asked how I could still resent her after almost a year and after everything we've been through, but I told her it wasn't resentment. I was very honest. I told her that thinking about her, talking about her, or even seeing her still hurts a lot. And that's why I couldn't talk to her. She said that was exactly why we needed to talk. I didn't see the point. I just walked away since then. Sarah's tried to approach me twice more, and I've shut her down both times. Some of my friends think I'm being too harsh and that I should talk to her for closure. Others say it's not okay to torture her over what happened forever, but that's not what this is about. I don't have any resentment or negative feelings towards her anymore. I even recognize now that I share some of the blame, but it still hurts. I can't talk to her because it's like reopening an old wound that never fully healed. So ADE for refusing to talk to her, TLDR my ex. Sarah broke off our relationship almost a year ago, and I since moved on as best I can recently. She's been trying to talk to me, but I told her I can't because it still hurts too much. Some friends think I am being too harsh, but I don't resent her. I just don't want to reopen old wounds. AA for refusing to talk to her. Update. Hey everyone, I wanted to give an update and thank you all for your input. I took the time to read through every comment. And while I didn't respond to all of them, it was only because I didn't have anything to add. I am truly grateful for everyone who shared their thoughts. It has been incredibly helpful. After reading everything and thinking it through, I've decided to stick to my decision not to talk to Sarah. Something I forgot to mention in my original post, though I did tell a few commenters, is that I blocked her everywhere after we broke up the second time. Over the last few days, it seems like her persistence has started to backfire. Some of our mutual friends, including the ones who initially told me I should talk to her, have become frustrated with her constant attempts to contact me. Apparently, Fave started turning on her because of it. 3 days ago, Emily, the friend I vented to back then, made a post on social media about stalkers. She didn't name Sarah, but a lot of people picked up on what she meant. I've also seen several comments on my original post suggesting that Sarah might have been stalking me, her job in the same city, and her coincidental appearance at the park all line up with that theory for what it's worth. I know her uncle owns a company here, so maybe that is really why she moved, but honestly, it's not my problem. And I am not going to look into it. Things have been quieter, friends have dropped the subject, and Sarah hasn't tried to reach out again. That is until yesterday. I watched the UFC event with some coworkers when it ended. I was heading to my car when my phone rang. It was one of our mutual friends calling. She said she had been talking to Sarah and asked if she could pass along a message. I sighed but told her to make it quick. The message was simple. Sarah said she understands why I don't want to talk to her. She promised she wouldn't try to reach out again, but added that she still thinks we need to talk. She said the door's open if I ever want to. I told my friend I didn't have a message to pass back and asked her not to bring up Sarah again in our conversation. If what Sarah said is true, it's a relief, but I am not holding my breath. I wouldn't be surprised if she tries something else. Maybe she thinks giving me space will make me go to her, but that chapter of my life is closed right now. I just want to focus on myself. I probably won't be dating anyone anytime soon. If there is one thing I've learned, it's that I need to get to know people better before jumping into a relationship. I've also been thinking about how loosely I use the word friend. That is another part of my life. I need to rethink. Some of the people I've called friends have proven they don't have my best interest at heart. A few people suggested therapy in the comments, and I will admit it is something I've been considering for now. I'm giving myself time to heal on my own, but if I still don't feel right, after a while, I will look into it. Thanks again to everyone who took the time to comment. Your advice has been a huge help in sorting all this out. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.